We're continuing to follow the story of Isaac and his family here, and Isaac's family problems reach their high point in the story that we'll be looking at this evening in chapter 27, the story of the stolen blessing. There's four characters who are involved in this story. That's Isaac, Rebekah, his wife, and their two sons, twin sons, Esau and Jacob. And in the story, there's only ever two characters in each scene. We don't have any scene where there are more than two characters who are involved. So we see how it switches between the different characters as we go through the story. We want to begin then in chapter 27 of Genesis, and we'll read here the first 17 verses of the story. When Isaac was old and his eyes were dim so that he could not see, he called Esau, his older son, and said to him, "My son." And he answered, "Here I am." He said, "Behold, I am old. I do not know the day of my death. Now then, take your weapons, your quiver and your bow, and go out to the field and hunt game for me, and prepare for me savory food such as I love, and bring it to me that I may eat, that I may bless you before I die." Now Rebekah was listening when Isaac spoke to his son Esau. So when Esau went to the field to hunt for game and bring it, Rebekah said to her son Jacob, "I heard your father speak to your brother Esau. Bring me game and prepare for me savory food that I may eat it and bless you before the Lord before I die. Now therefore, my son, obey my word as I command you. Go to the flock and fetch me 2 good kits, that I may prepare from them savory food for your father, such as he loves. And you shall bring it to your father to eat, so that he may bless you before he dies." But Jacob said to Rebekah his mother, "Behold, my brother Esau is a hairy man, and I am a smooth man. Perhaps my father will feel me, and I shall seem to be mocking him, and bring a curse upon myself and not a blessing." His mother said to him, "Upon me be your curse, my son. Only obey my word and go fetch them to me." So he went and took them and brought them to his mother, and his mother prepared savory food such as his father loved. Then Rebekah took the best garments of Esau, her older son, which were with her in the house, and put them on Jacob, her younger son. And the skins of the kids she put upon his hands and upon the smooth part of his neck. And she gave the savory food and the bread which she had prepared into the hand of her son Jacob. The story here really demonstrates how a parent's favoritism for one child over the other can lead to rivalry and conflict and tear a family apart. We've already been told back in chapter 25 and verse 28 of this problem of favoritism. Chapter 25 verse 28 says, "Isaac loved Esau because he ate of his game, but Rebekah loved Jacob." So there's already this division within the family, and as each party seeks to gain the advantage over the other, there's going to be no happy ending to the story. And yet, despite these human failings and weaknesses which are seen in this story, God is still able to work out his plan and his purpose for his people. God's providence is still at work. So the story begins then with Isaac in old age, when his eyesight has deteriorated. Verse 1 says, "When Isaac was old and his eyes were dim so that he could not see." Of course, one of the effects of old ages is the deterioration in our eyesight, and Isaac is suffering that. And being aware of his old age, Isaac then wants to make provision for his son Esau and pronounce the blessing upon him. Along with the birthright, the firstborn son would also receive the blessing from his father, which would make him the head of the family and would ensure God's blessing upon him, to make him fruitful and successful, and to provide him with success over his enemies. The blessing was really the bestowal of something good upon the firstborn, and there was a prophetic element to it. So it's not just praying for someone as we might pray for God to bless members of our own family. There's more to it than that. There's a prophetic element involved in this as well. So the blessing would give the one who is blessed the confidence then to walk with God, believing that God was taking care of him and his family and with his descendants as well. So Isaac summoned his son Esau and told him that he was aware of his old age and that he did not know the day of his death. We can work it out from other references and other ages that are stated in different parts of the story, and later on that at this time Isaac is around 137 years old. And he doesn't know, he realizes he's reaching old age. His half-brother Ishmael had died at the age of 137. And so perhaps he's expecting, well, one day soon I'm also going to die. In fact, Isaac would live for another 40 plus years, and he would die at the age of 180, as we learn from chapter 35 and verse 28. So he's not quite on his deathbed, but he is deteriorating into old age, and he's aware of that. So Isaac then instructed Esau to take his weapons, to go into the field to hunt for game, and that would be deer or antelope, that type of animal, and prepare a dish of Isaac's favorite food so that he might bless Esau before he dies. And all of this is a sort of formal ceremony that is taking place here involving a meal, the eating of a meal. And it's similar to the sort of covenant meal that would be eaten when two parties made a covenant. So it's a formal arrangement that is going on here, that Esau is to prepare this meal and he's to bring it back to Isaac, and then Isaac will bless him. But Rebekah has overheard Isaac's conversation with Esau. And whilst Esau is out hunting game, Rebekah then reported to Jacob what she had overheard Isaac say to Esau. Rebekah now devised a scheme by which Jacob would be able to secure the blessing from Isaac instead of Esau. So she instructed Jacob now to go and fetch 2 kids from the flock, which she would then prepare in a way that Isaac loved. So she will disguise the food so that it will appear that he's eating game, his favorite meal, when really he's eating a goat or lamb from the flock. Jacob would then bring the food into Isaac, and in exchange then he would receive the blessing. Jacob, though, anticipates a problem with this plan. Jacob and Esau are physically very different. Esau is described as being a hairy man, whilst Jacob has smooth skin. Perhaps Isaac will feel his son and notice that something is not quite right. In that case, Jacob would seem to be mocking or making fun of his father, and instead of receiving a blessing, he would receive a curse. But Jacob is concerned that his father would see him as this trickster. However, Rebekah sought to reassure Jacob by saying that the curse would be upon her and not Jacob. So if it all went wrong, she would bear the curse rather than Jacob. So she told Jacob, well, you just fetch the 2 kids from the flock. And then Rebekah prepared the food as Isaac loved, and Rebekah then dressed Jacob up in Esau's best garments, which were in the house. She also took the skins of the kids that had been used for the meal. She put them on Jacob's hands and around the smooth part of his neck, so in order to disguise his appearance. And she then gave him this savory food and the bread which she had prepared, and he was to take it into Isaac. This part of the story perhaps shows something of the character of Rebekah and how she behaved towards Jacob. It was she who had overheard the conversation between Isaac and Esau. It was she who had devised this plan to get Jacob the blessing. It was she who told Jacob, just obey her words, just do as I say, when he raised this possible problem. And it was she who disguised Jacob with Esau's clothes and the goat skin. So she's very much in taking the initiative here in making these arrangements. And Rebekah was really teaching Jacob to deceive his father. and to defraud his brother by lying about all of this. Now, even if she had wanted to secure what God had promised her younger son back in chapter 25, verse 23, the methods or the way in which she's going about doing this were completely wrong. Back in chapter 25 and verse 23, God had said concerning the children before they were born, when they're in the womb, the Lord said to her, 2 nations are in your womb, and 2 peoples born of you shall be divided. The one shall be stronger than the other. The elder shall serve the younger. So the Lord had predicted there that the elder one would serve the younger. So perhaps Rebecca is trying to make arrangements for that, for what God had said there to come about, for that to be fulfilled. If we read on in the story now from verses, we see what happens next. So he, that's Jacob, he went in to his father and said, "My father." And he said, "Here I am. Who are you, my son?" Jacob said to his father, "I am Esau, your firstborn. I have done as you told me. Now sit up and eat of my game, that you may bless me." But Isaac said to his son, "How is it that you have found it so quickly, my son?" He answered, "Because the Lord your God granted me success." Then Isaac said to Jacob, "Come near, that I may feel you, my son, to know whether you are really my son Esau or not." So Jacob went near to Isaac his father, who felt him, and said, "The voice is Jacob's voice, but the hands are the hands of Esau." And he did not recognize him, because his hands were hairy like his brother Esau's hands. So he blessed him. He said, "Are you really my son Esau?" He answered, "I am." Then he said, "Bring it to me, that I may eat of my son's game and bless you." So he brought it to him, and he ate, and he brought him wine, and he drank. Then his father Isaac said to him, "Come near and kiss me, my son." So he came near and kissed him, and he smelled the smell of his garments and blessed him, and said, "See, the smell of my son is as the smell of a field which the Lord has blessed. May God give you of the dew of heaven and of the fatness of the earth and plenty of grain and wine. Let people serve you and nations bow down to you. Be Lord over your brothers, and may your mother's sons bow down to you. Cursed be everyone who curses you, and blessed be everyone who blesses you." Jacob now took the meal that his mother had prepared into his father Isaac, and the account is here full of drama and suspense as we wonder whether Jacob will get away with this. Jacob simply addressed Isaac here as "my father," probably wanted to say as little as possible. And Isaac replied, "Here I am. Who are you, my son?" And due to his poor eyesight, Isaac was uncertain which of his sons had come in. And in reply, Jacob said that he was Esau, the firstborn, and he had done as Isaac had asked. So Jacob told Isaac to sit up and eat the thing that he had prepared, that you may bless me. Isaac suspects something is not quite right here. He's surprised that the game has been found so quickly. He asks, "How is it that you have found it so quickly, my son?" And Jacob's answer is, "Because the Lord your God granted me success." Jacob has already lied once in saying that he was Esau. Now he lies again. Jacob involves God in this deception now as well. He says, "The Lord your God granted me success." Isaac is still suspicious about the identity of the son who has brought him this meal. And so he says to Jacob, "Come near, that I may feel you, my son, to know whether you are really my son Esau or not." Isaac wants to be certain before he pronounces this blessing upon his son. So when Jacob went near to his father, Isaac felt him, touched him. He says the voice is Jacob's voice, but the hands are the hands of Esau. So the voice sounded like Jacob, but the hands, which Isaac felt, were hairy, like Esau's hands. So Isaac was confused by this discrepancy. But it sounds like Jacob, but he feels like Esau. And so he asks him directly, "Are you really my son Esau?" But again, Jacob lied. "I am," he says. And this seems then to have convinced Isaac that he was really dealing with Esau. So he asked him to bring him the game for him to eat, and then he would bless him. Jacob served his father the game and brought him wine to drink. And Isaac then called Jacob to come near to him and kiss him. And this would provide Isaac with a further opportunity to check the identity of this son. When Jacob came near to Isaac, Isaac could smell his garments, and they smelled like the smell of the field. And so again, this convinced him that it really was Esau here. Isaac's senses have been deceived. His sense of taste in this meal, which wasn't game which had been hunted, but rather prepared from the flock. His sense of smell was he could smell. He thought that he could smell Esau. His sense of touch was deceived. When he felt Jacob's hands and thought they were Esau's hands. So he can't see anything to be able to verify any of this, but all of his other senses have been deceived by this. And Jacob has deceived Isaac by his words, by saying that he is Esau, by his actions in presenting this food, which isn't the real thing, and by the clothing that he's wearing. So there's a great deception that has gone on here. Isaac then blessed Jacob, he's still thinking that this is Esau, that he's blessing Esau. And it was a blessing for the fruitfulness of the earth. He says, "May God give you of the dew of heaven and of the fatness of the earth and plenty of grain and wine." So may God bless you with these abundant crops. May there be dew from heaven. May the earth produce all of these good things for you. And it was a blessing for peoples and nations to serve him. Let peoples serve you and nations bow down to you. And it was a blessing that he would be Lord over his family, be Lord over your brothers, and may your mother's sons bow down to you. It was a blessing that those who curse him may be cursed, and those who bless him may be blessed. So there's a lot involved here in this blessing that Isaac pronounces upon Jacob, whilst he's thinking that he's pronouncing it upon Esau. Well, let's read on in the story in verses 30 to 40. As soon as Isaac had finished blessing Jacob, when Jacob had scarcely gone out from the presence of Isaac his father, Esau his brother came in from his hunting. He also prepared savory food and brought it to his father. And he said to his father, "Let my father arise and eat of his son's game, that you may bless me." His father Isaac said to him, "Who are you?" He answered, "I am your son, your firstborn, Esau." Then Isaac trembled violently and said, "Who was it then that hunted game and brought it to me, and I ate it all before you came? And I have blessed him. Yes, and he shall be blessed." When Esau heard the words of his father, he cried out with an exceedingly great and bitter cry, and said to his father, "Bless me, even me also, O my father." But he said, "Your brother came with guile, and he has taken away your blessing." Esau said, "Is he not rightly named Jacob? For he has supplanted me these 2 times. He took away my birthright, and behold, now he has taken away my blessing." Then he said, "Have you not reserved a blessing for me?" Isaac answered Esau, "Behold, I have made him your lord, and all his brothers I have given to him for servants, and with grain and wine I have sustained him. What then can I do for you, my son?" Esau said to his father, "Have you but one blessing, my father? Bless me, even me also, O my father." And Esau lifted up his voice and wept. Then Isaac his father answered him, of the earth shall your dwelling be, and away from the dew of heaven on high. By your sword you shall live, and you shall serve your brother. But when you break loose, you shall break his yoke from your neck. So almost as soon as Jacob had left the presence of his father, and having received the blessing, Esau came back from his hunting expedition. The tension in the story builds here as we wonder what will happen when Esau and Isaac discover that Jacob has deceived both of them. How is this all going to work out? So Esau then prepared the food and he brought it in to his father. His words spoken to his father are similar to Jacob's. He says, "Let my father arise and eat of his son's game, that you may bless me." Those were the similar words that Jacob had said when he came in verse 19. "I have done as you told me. Now sit up and eat of my game, that you may bless me." Isaac asked him, "Who are you?" Same question that he had asked when Jacob came in. Jacob came in and said, "My father," and Isaac asks, "Who are you, my son?" Esau replied, "I am your son, your firstborn Esau." Again, the same answer that Jacob had given in verse 19 as well. He says, "I am Esau, your firstborn." So there's a parallel here between the questions and answers that are given in both cases. Isaac now begins to realize what has happened, and we're told that he trembled violently. He's physically shaking because of this. And he asks, "Who was it then that hunted game and brought it to me? And I ate it all before you came, and I have blessed him. Yes, and he shall be blessed." Isaac now realizes what has happened and the terrible mistake that he has made. Esau was the one that he had wanted to bless, but the blessing has now already been given to Jacob, the wrong son. And the son that he has blessed will be blessed. It's not something that can be undone or taken back. There's something binding about all of this. And when Esau heard his father's words, he became greatly distressed. We're told here he cried out with an exceedingly great and bitter cry. And he pleaded with Isaac to bless him as well. So Isaac now understands the deception that has been played on him. And he tells Esau, "Your brother came with guile, and he has taken away your blessing." Esau responds by saying that Jacob has lived up to his name. Is he not rightly named Jacob? For he has supplanted me these 2 times. He took away my birthright, and behold, now he has taken away my blessing. His name Jacob means he supplants or he deceives. And Esau says, well, he's just living up to his name. He's rightly named Jacob because that's what he's done, and he's tricked me twice now. Esau, of course, had agreed to exchange his birthright for that meal of pottage, so he was involved in that, and perhaps he shouldn't be complaining that Jacob had taken it from him, as he had not really valued it. But even so, it was Jacob who had manipulated that situation in order to deprive Esau of that birthright as well. Esau's regret over all of this is found in Hebrews chapter 12, verses 15 to 17. The writer makes reference to this in encouraging the Hebrew Christians here in their faith. He says, "See to it that no one fail to obtain the grace of God, that no root of bitterness spring up and cause trouble. By it the many become defiled, that no one be immoral or irreligious like Esau, single meal. For you know that afterward, when he desired to inherit the blessing, he was rejected, for he found no chance to repent, though he sought it with tears." There's no way that Esau could get that blessing back or reverse what had happened here. But Esau persists in asking Isaac, is there no blessing for me? Have you not reserved a blessing for me? He says. And Isaac tells Esau of what the blessing of Jacob had entailed. He says in verse 37, behold, I have made him your Lord, and all his brothers I have given to him for servants, and with grain and wine I have sustained him. What then can I do for you, my son? Isaac's given it all away, given it to Jacob. He has nothing left to bless Esau with, and none of this can be undone, none of this can be changed. And so Esau persists in his plea to be blessed. Have you but one blessing, my father? Bless me, even me also, O my father. And we're told that he lifted up his voice and wept. It's a pitiful scene which shows Esau's desperation. And all Isaac can do is offer him some small comfort with this blessing in verses 39 and 40, that Esau would have to dwell away from the fatness of the earth, away from the dew of heaven, which is the opposite of what was entailed in the blessing in verse 28. So the land where he would live would be dry and harsh, and he would have to live by the sword in order to survive, and he would serve his brother. It's hardly to be thought of as a blessing at all. It's the prediction of the hard life that Esau would have to face. But when he finally breaks loose, he shall break the yoke from his neck. So it's a blessing of survival. You will survive, but it's going to be hard, and you will eventually get your freedom. And the effects of this blessing, of both of these blessings, would be felt by the descendants of Jacob and Esau. They are the ones, the descendants really, who feel the effects of the individuals, Esau and Jacob personally. So there's a prophetic element to all of this, and we see the fulfillment of this blessing, if we can call it that, upon Esau in 2 Samuel chapter 8, verses 13 and 14, when the Edomites, of course, were the descendants of Esau. The Edomite nation were descendants of Esau. So 2 Samuel chapter 8, verses 13 and 14 tells us of David conquering the Edomites and bringing them under his control. David won a name for himself. When he returned, he slew 18,000 Edomites in the Valley of Salt, and he put garrisons in Edom. Throughout all Edom he put garrisons, and all the Edomites became David's servants, and the Lord gave victory to David wherever he went. So that prophecy that the elder would serve the younger is fulfilled here in these events. And then the other side of that, what Isaac had said to Esau, when you break loose, you shall break his yoke from your neck. We can see the fulfillment of that in 2 Kings chapter 8, verses 20 to 22, describing events that took place in the days of King Jehoram of Judah. 2 Kings chapter 8, verse 20. In his days, that's the days of King Jehoram, in his days Edom revolted from the rule of Judah and set up a king of their own. Then Joram passed over to Zair with all his chariots and rose by night, and he and his chariot commanders smote the Edomites who had surrounded him, but his army fled home. So Edom revolted from the rule of Judah to this day. It speaks there of the Edomites revolting from the rule of Judah and breaking free, and that it fulfills that other part of that blessing that Isaac had given. When you break loose, you shall break his yoke from your neck. So what happens next? We read on in the story here, verses 41 to 46. Now Esau hated Jacob because of the blessing with which his father had blessed him. And Esau said to himself, the days of mourning for my father are approaching, Then I will kill my brother Jacob. But the words of Esau, her older son, were told to Rebekah. So she sent and called Jacob, her younger son, and said to him, Behold, your brother Esau comforts himself by planning to kill you. Now therefore, my son, obey my voice. Arise, flee to Laban my brother in Haran, and stay with him a while, until your brother's fury turns away, until your brother's anger turns away, and he forgets what you have done to him. Then I will send and fetch you from there. Why should I be bereft of you both in one day? Then Rebekah said to Isaac, I'm weary of my life because of the Hittite women. If Jacob marries one of the Hittite women such as these, one of the women of the land, what good will my life be to me? Esau now hated Jacob for depriving him of their father's blessing, and Esau planned to kill Jacob once Isaac was dead. And Esau anticipated that that would happen soon. Rebekah was informed of Esau's intention to kill Jacob, and so she called Jacob to her and told him, Behold, your brother Esau comforts himself by planning to kill you. He's nursing this desire for revenge within his heart. Esau was biding his time, just waiting for the death of their father, and then he would get even with his brother. But Rebekah has devised another plan to ensure the protection of her favorite son. She now instructed Jacob to flee to her brother Laban in Haran and to stay with him until Esau's fury and anger had died down and he's forgotten all about it and forgotten what Jacob has done to him. And then, when it's safe to do so, Rebekah will send for Jacob for him to return home. So she seems to expect that this is something that can happen quite soon, perhaps. And she asks, why should I be bereft of both of you in one day? If Esau had killed Jacob, then Esau would also be liable to the death penalty, to be killed for murdering his own brother. And so Rebekah would then lose both sons. So Rebekah, she very cleverly or craftily went to Isaac, and she complained how Esau's Hittite wives were making her life miserable, making her life weary, she says. And she expresses her concern at what would happen if Jacob also married one of the women of the land. So in this way, Rebekah doesn't come out straight and say to Isaac, I think we should send Jacob away. She plants this thought in his mind, well, what would happen if Jacob married one of the women of the land, if my life is miserable now? So she plants this thought in Isaac's mind, and he's the one who then makes the decision. So although Rebekah had devised this scheme to protect Jacob, it meant that Jacob would be away for many years, and actually Rebekah would not see him again. So she thought, well, he'll go there for a while, I'll send for him, and then he can come back. But in fact, Jacob and Rebekah would not see him again. And this is the last mention we have of Rebekah in the story. The only further thing that is mentioned about her is her burial, which is referred to in chapter 49 and verse 31. Which records the death of Jacob here. We're leaping forward to Jacob's death here. Mentions there they buried Abraham and Sarah his wife. There they buried Isaac and Rebekah his wife. And there I buried Leah. That's Jacob is speaking those words there. Again, that's the cave of Machpelah, where all of those were buried. Rebekah also would be buried there. But this is her last role in any story that we have. She's now disappears from the scene. So next week we will see what happens as the story continues in chapter 28. We're left hanging there at the end of chapter 27, and the story continues into chapter 28. There's a few questions perhaps to think about here from chapter 27. What were the consequences of this deception that was played? Who bears responsibility for what happened in all of this? And who do you sympathize with in this story? So have a think about some of those questions, and we'll stop. And if anyone has